Hello, my dear students. Today we are going to talk about the human nervous system. Now, in the human nervous system, what do we have to learn? We have to learn about the nerve impulses how to describe a nerve impulse as an electrical signal that passes along the nerve cells called neurons. We have to learn about the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system. Then we have to also learn about the different kind of neurons. We have to learn to describe a reflex arc, a reflex action, and a synapse. We also have to learn to distinguish between the voluntary and involuntary actions, and we also have to learn to describe the structure of a synapse as to how does an electrical impulse travel in the neurons. Okay, so let's start. Now let's imagine that we are watching a cricket match. So what are the different activities that you can see during this particular match? There are many different activities that are taking place all simultaneously, and all of these need to be well coordinated. So let's look at this particular picture. We can see that the batsman is batting, and we can see that the wicket keeper is catching a ball. Now for this, a lot of coordination is required. Now, the batsman and the wicket keeper, both of them, they are very vigilant because of the vision part. They are also thinking as to how the ball can be caught or how the bat can hit a six, etc. Also, there is movement, and all of them, the vision, the thinking, and the movement, all of them, they are well coordinated. So for this coordination to happen, we need the nervous system. Now the nervous system consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Now the nervous system is a system that controls all of the activities of the body. And the nervous system can be divided into two parts. The first part is called as the central nervous system. We'll call it as the CNS. And the second one is the peripheral nervous system, which is also called as the PNS. Now let's look at each one of them separately. The central nervous system, it consists of the brain and the spinal cord. This is your brain and this is your spinal cord. It regulates all activities of the body. The second one is the peripheral nervous system, which consists of the nerves. So whatever you can see here, this part, these parts that you can see, all these are all the nerves of your body, and the peripheral nervous system consists of these nerves. It is a network of nerves spread throughout the body, connecting all parts of the body to the central nervous system, that is your brain and the spinal cord. Now let's see what is a nerve. The nerve is a tissue. The nerve is composed of special cells which are called as the neurons. Now let's look at how does a neuron look like. This is how a neuron looks like. And neurons are specialized cells capable of creating and transmitting electrochemical impulses. Now let's look at a detailed structure of a neuron. Now here you can see a structure here which is called as the cell body. This is your axon. These are all the nerve endings. Now, and this part that you can see, these are the dendrites which are connected to your cell body. Now these dendrites are branch-like structures that receive messages from other neurons and allow the transmission of electrical signals or messages to the cell body, right? The second one is your axon. The axon is a tube-like structure that carries electrical impulse from the cell body to the axon terminal that passes the impulse to another neuron. Now at the end of the axon, you actually have your nerve endings. The cell body, each neuron has a cell body with a nucleus Golgi body, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria and other components. These nerve endings are connected to another dendrite. Like you can imagine this particular neuron is there and at the ending you have got another neuron kept over here. So the nerve ending of this is connected to the dendrite of the next neuron. So here in this particular part there is something which is called as a synapse which is getting created. We'll be learning more about the synapse in the later on part of the video. So basically the synapse is a chemical junction between the terminal of one neuron and dendrites of another neuron. Now lastly, the myelin sheath is an insulating layer or sheath that forms around the nerves. So it forms around the nerves including those in the brain and the spinal cord. It is made up of proteins and fatty substances. This myelin sheath allows electrical impulses to transmit quickly and efficiently along the nerve cells. So this was the structure of a neuron. Now next we go on to what is the difference between voluntary and involuntary actions. Now as the name suggests, voluntary meaning something which you do on your own, and involuntary action is something in which you do not have any kind of a control. So in humans, many activities such as the heartbeat, peristalsis that you can see in your stomach, in your esophagus, and the breathing movements are automatic and are not controlled consciously. They are called involuntary actions. Basically, you do not have any kind of control over these involuntary actions. Activities that are controlled consciously are called voluntary actions. Like if you have to pick up a particular object, so the way your hand moves, it's all well coordinated with your brain and thus you actually want to do that particular action and thus it is called as a voluntary action. Now we look at what do certain terms mean. Now, we all have got sense organs. So, which are the sense organs? Your nose, your skin, your eyes, all these are the sense organs. So, in all these sense organs, there are certain receptors which are present. So, these sense organs are used to detect stimuli. They are also called as the receptors. They inform the central nervous system, that is the brain and the spinal cord, about the changes in the surroundings by producing electrical impulses which are called as the nerve impulses. Now these nerve impulses are transmitted through the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system. So once a sense organ gets a particular stimuli, it is recognized by the receptors and from the receptors it goes through the peripheral nervous system into your central nervous system. Now, many times you would have seen that whenever you're pricked or something is actually going into your eye, you immediately close your eye, right? Or if at all you have got a pinprick, you immediately remove your hand. So these kind of actions are called as reflex actions. And these reflex actions do not go till your brain. They go only till your spinal cord. Because for these actions, you require an immediate response. Like if at all something is going into your eye, immediately you have to close your eye. Or if at all, if you do not immediately close your eye, then the particular particle will go inside your eye and it will cause a problem. So let's look at what is a reflex action and what kind of a route these impulses take. Now there are certain sensory receptors which are present on your skin and your sensory organs. And these sensory receptors, they carry information from inside and outside the body through your sensory neurons. These sensory neurons, then they carry the nerve impulses or your electrical impulses to your body, to your brain or to the spinal cord. And from the spinal cord or the brain, it comes through the motor neuron to an effector muscle. Okay. Now here you can see that this particular person is being pricked by a pin. So the pin is is giving a stimulus to the hand. So at the arrival of the stimulus and the activation of the receptors which are present on the skin, the nerve impulses or the electrical impulses are being carried. So this activates the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron. The sensory neuron, they carry the impulses to the relay neuron. This is called as the relay neuron, which is present inside your brain or your spinal cord. Now from here, since it is a reflex action, it is going to go only till your spinal cord. And from the spinal cord, it is going to be carried to the effector organ. Now your effector organ is your muscles, because the muscles have to be pulled so that the hand is being pulled up. So step 1 is arrival of stimulus and activation of the receptor. Step 2 is activation of a sensory neuron. Step 3 is information processing in the CNS, that is the brain or the spinal cord. And in this case, since it is a reflex action, it is the spinal cord which is processing the information. Then step 4 is activation of a motor neuron. And step 5 is response by the effector. Let's look at one more example. Now, if a person touches a candle by mistake, okay, so the candle becomes the stimulus. Now, there are receptor cells which are present on your skin, and that is the temperature receptors which are present in your finger. These sense the change in the temperature because of the candle, which gives a burning sensation on your hand or your finger, and these are transmitted through your sensory neurons to the relay neurons which are present in your spinal cord. Now next, the relay neuron transmits the nerve signals to your motor neurons. The motor neuron, then it transfers the impulses to the muscle in your arm, which is the effector organ, and it gives a signal to the muscles to move away your hand from the candle, which is the response. So here you can see a stimulus, which is the candle, the receptors which are present in your finger, the coordinator, that is the relay neuron, the effector, that is your muscle, and the response which is given is your arm being moved away from the candle. Now we have been studying about the different kind of neurons. Now let's learn how to differentiate these three neurons. The sensory neurons, they carry nerve impulse from the receptor to the central nervous system, that is your brain or your spinal cord. The motor neurons, they carry nerve impulses from the central nervous system to the effector, that could be your muscle or any of your gland. And the third one is your interneurons, which is also called as the relay neurons, which is found completely within your CNS. So basically they provide a link within the CNS between the sensory neuron and the motor. We also have to learn how to identify a motor neuron, a relay neuron, and the sensory neurons from diagram. So that is your learning objective. Okay, so motor neuron carries impulses from the CNS to the effector. So here you can see a diagram of a motor neuron. Cell body at one end of the cell and has got a myelin sheath around it. We'll see a detailed structure here. Here you can see the cell body at one end. You can see the myelin sheath. Okay. Next is the sensory neuron, which carries impulses from the receptor to the CNS. This also has got a myelin sheath. Okay, here you can see the myelin sheath. Okay, but here the stark difference between a motor neuron and a sensory neuron is that the motor neuron has got a cell body at the end, whereas the sensory neuron has got a cell body in between. Okay, here you can see the structure. Here you can see that the cell body is present in between the neuron. And the third one is your relay neuron. Okay, and this carries impulses slowly across the spinal cord. And here you can see the interneuron or the relay neuron. Here you can see there are no myelin sheath which is present. So no myelin sheath, that is because this gives time for the action to be modified by impulses carried down the spinal cord from the brain. Okay. So here you can see all of them. Here this is your sensory neuron which has got the cell body in between. Here you have got the motor neuron which has got a cell body at the start of it. Both of them, they consist of myelin sheath, whereas this particular association neuron or your relay neurons, they do not have a myelin sheath. So please understand this properly as to how to recognize or how to differentiate between a sensory neuron, a relay neuron and a motor neuron. Now let's look at one of the most important aspects of this particular chapter, that is the synapse. Now till now I have been speaking about the nerve impulses being carried, okay, from the sensory neuron to the interneuron or the relay neuron, and from the relay neuron into your motor neurons, okay. But how does this nerve impulse exactly travel? Okay, stimulation of the sense organs results in an electrical signal or a nerve impulse being sent along the nerve to the brain, and these nerve impulses are really very quick. That is, approximately they have a speed of approximately 120 meters per second. Okay, now let's see how this gets transmitted. Now this is your presynaptic neuron, and this is your postsynaptic neuron. Presynaptic neuron, this consists of the nerve endings. Do you all remember the nerve endings which I had shown in the neuron diagram? And this is the next connected neuron which has got these dendrites. So this is one of the dendrites and this is the nerve ending. Now, at the nerve ending, when a nerve impulse is coming in, can you see these vesicles here? Inside these vesicles, there are neurotransmitters which are present. So, whenever these nerve impulse, when they come in, these vesicles, they join with the cell membrane of this particular neuron. Okay, that is the nerve ending of the neuron. And when they fuse, when these vesicles, when they fuse with the cell membrane over here, the neurotransmitters, they are let out. And this particular part that you can see, this is called as the synaptic cleft. That is the space between the presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, and in the postsynaptic neuron there are neurotransmitter receptor molecules which are present. These neurotransmitters which are there, they get connected to the receptor molecules which are present over here, and that's how the electrical impulse gets transmitted. Okay, just to give a gist of the whole thing, we have got the nerve endings here. This is the dendrite. The nerve impulse comes in. These vesicles, they fuse with the cell membrane, and then the neurotransmitters are transmitted to the synaptic cleft, and the receptor molecules which are present over here, that is in the dendrite part, they recognize these neurotransmitter molecules, and thus the electrical impulse gets transmitted to the through the dendrite into the next neuron. In a reflex arc, the synapses ensure that impulses travel only in one direction. That is, the impulses, they travel only in one direction. So basically the synapse, it acts like a one-way valve. That is, in the veins also we have seen they have got valves which allow the blood to flow only in one direction. So the synapse also acts in the same way. There is only neurotransmitter on one side. So you can see that there are neurotransmitters only on one side. There are no neurotransmitters over here. Okay, so the impulses can only go across from that side. Thus, synapses ensure that nerve impulses only travel in one direction. One group of these neurotransmitters is called as endorphins. Now, many times when we exercise, we get that feel-good effect, right? So this feel-good effect is because of these endorphins. These endorphins, they help to reduce sensation of pain. They also affect the mood, and they reduce sensations of hunger and thirst. One situation in which endorphins are produced is when we do exercise, and that is why exercises often has a feel-good effect. Many drugs like heroin act upon these synapses actually. Heroin is metabolized to morphine, which fits into the endorphin receptors. This is why heroin also gives you a very good kind of a feeling, and that's why people get addicted to this heroin. There are a few questions based on this particular topic. Here you can see the question here. The diagram represents a simple reflex arc. Okay. What is the sequence of nerve cells through which an impulse passes during a reflex action? I request all of you to pause this particular video and go through it. And the answer is D. Now, why is the answer D? That's because the reflex action is going to first pass through R, which is the sensory neuron, then it is going to go into P, which is the relay neuron, and then is going to come into Q, that is your motor neuron. Next one is which diagram shows a sensory neuron. First, A is totally ruled out because this is just a cell. D is totally ruled out because this is a sperm cell. And the options which are left is C and D. Do you all remember that when I spoke about the difference in the neurons, the sensory neuron has got the cell body in between. So C is the right answer. The third one is the diagram shows the structure involved in a reflex action. What is the sequence in which impulses pass through these structures? And the answer is B. First, they pass through Q. Okay, here you have got a hot pan, and thus the person, since he is touching it, the impulses first they travel through Q, and then they pass through R, which is your sensory neuron. Then they pass through S, which is your relay neuron, and then they pass through P, which is your motor neurons, and which are connected to the muscles. So this becomes your effector. Okay, so B is the right answer. Thank you very much, my dear students. I hope you understood this particular topic properly. If you have any doubts, you can always get back to me as usual. Bye-bye.